translation by H. T. Francis. Source. Adapted from archaic translation by H. T. Francis. Jakarta number 521. Tesakuna Jataka. It is this I ask, etc. This story the master, while living at Jetavana Monastery, told by way of advice to the king of Kosala. Now this king came to hear the preaching of the righteous path, and the master addressed him in the following terms. A king, sire, should rule his kingdom righteously, for whenever kings are unrighteous, then also are his officers unrighteous. And teaching him the right way as told in the Katakanipata, he pointed out the suffering and the blessing involved in following or abstaining from evil courses, and explained in detail the misery resulting from sensual pleasures, comparing them to dreams and the like, saying, in the case of these men, no bribe can move relentless death, no kindness soften. No one in fight can conquer death, for all are doomed to die. And when they depart to another world, except their own virtuous action, they have no other sure refuge, so that they must inevitably forsake low associations. And for their reputation's sake they must not be careless, but be earnest and exercise rule in righteousness, even as kings of old, before Buddha arose, abiding in the advice of the wise, ruled righteously and departing attained to the heavenly city, and at the request of the king he told a story of the past. Once upon a time Brahmadatta ruled in Benares and had no heir, and his prayer for a son or daughter was not answered. Now one day he went with a large escort to his park, and after amusing himself a part of the day in the grounds, he had a couch spread for him at the foot of the royal sal tree. And after a short nap he awoke and, looking up to the sal tree, he saw a bird's nest in it. And at the sight of it a desire to possess it sprang up in his heart, and summoning one of his attendants he said, "Climb the tree and see if there is anything in the nest or not." The man climbed up and finding 3 eggs in it told the king. "Then mind you do not breathe over them," he said, and, spreading some cotton in a casket, he told the man to come down gently, and place the eggs in it. When they had been brought down, he took up the casket and asked his courtiers to what bird these eggs belonged. They answered, "We do not know. Hunters will know." The king sent for the hunters and asked them. "Sire," said they, "one is an owl's egg, another is a manar bird's, and the third is a parrot's. Please tell, are there eggs of 3 different birds in one nest?" "Yes, sire, when there is nothing to fear, what is carefully deposited does not perish." The king being pleased said, "They shall be my children," and committing the 3 eggs to the charge of 3 courtiers, he said, "These shall be my children. Do you carefully watch over them, and when the young birds come out of the shell, let me know." They took good care of them. First of all the owl's egg was hatched. And the courtier sent for a hunter and said, "Find out the gender of the young bird, whether it is a cock or a hen bird." And when he had examined it and stated it to be a cockbird, the courtier went to the king and said, "Sire, a son is born to you." The king was delighted and gave much wealth to him, and saying, "Watch carefully over him and call his name Vesantara," he sent him away. He did as he was told. Then a few days afterwards the egg of the manar bird was hatched. And the second courtier also, after getting the huntsman to examine it, and hearing it was a hen bird, went to the king and announced to him the birth of a daughter. The king was delighted, and gave to him also much treasure, and saying, "Watch carefully over my daughter and call her name Kundalini," he sent him away. He also did what he was told. Then after a few days the parrot's egg was hatched, and the third courtier, when told by the huntsman who examined it that it was a cockbird, went and announced to the king the birth of a son. The king was delighted, and paying him liberally said, "Hold a festival in honor of my son with great pomp, and call his name Jambaka, and then sent him away. He too did as he was told. And these 3 birds grew up in the houses of the 3 courtiers with all the ceremony due to royalty. The king speaks of them habitually, as my son and my daughter. His courtiers made merry, one with another, saying, "Look at what the king does. He goes about speaking of birds as his son and his daughter." The king thought, "These courtiers do not know the extent of my children's wisdom. I will make it evident to them." So he sent one of his ministers to Vesantara to say, "Your father wishes to ask you a question. When shall he come and ask it?" The minister came and bowing to Vesantara delivered the message. Vesantara sent for the courtier who looked after him and said, "My father, they tell me, wants to ask me a question. When he comes, we must show him all respect," and he asked when is he to come? The courtier said, "Let him come on the 7th day from this." Vesantara on hearing this said, "Let my father come on the 7th day from this," and with these words he sent the minister away. He went and told the king. On the 7th day the king ordered a drum to be beaten through the city and went to the house where his son lived. Vesantara treated the king with great respect and had great respect paid even to the slaves and hired servants. The king, after eating of food in the house of Vesantara, and enjoying great distinction, returned to his own living place. Then he had a big pavilion erected in the palace yard. And, having made proclamation by beating a drum through the city, he sat in his magnificent pavilion surrounded by a great group of attendants and sent word to a courtier to conduct Vesantara to him. The courtier brought Vesantara on a golden stool. The bird sat on his father's lap and played with his father, and then went and sat on the stool. Then the king in the midst of the crowd of people questioned him as to the duty of a king and spoke the first stanza. "It is this I ask Vesantara, dear bird, may you be blessed. To one that's glad over men to reign, what course of life is best?" Vesantara, without answering the question directly, rebuked the king for his carelessness and spoke the second stanza. "Kamsa my sire, of Kasi lord, so careless long ago, urged me his son, though full of zeal, still greater zeal to show." Rebuking the king in this stanza and saying, "Sire, a king should rule his kingdom righteously, abiding in the 3 truths," and telling of a king's duty he spoke these stanzas. "First of all should a king put away all falsehood and anger and contempt. Let him do what a king has to do, or else to his vow be forsworn. By passion and sin led astray, should he err in the past, it is plain. He will live to repent of the deed, and will learn not to do it again. When a prince in his rule grows slack, untrue to his name and his fame, should his wealth all at once disappear, of that prince it is counted as shame." It was thus that good fortune and luck, when I asked, made reply unto me. In a man energetic and bold we delight, if from jealousy free. Ill luck, ever wrecking good fortune, delights in men of ill deeds. The hard-hearted creatures in whom a spirit of jealousy breeds. To all, O great king, be a friend, so that all may your safety ensure. Ill luck put away, but to luck that is good be a living secure. The man that is lucky and bold, O you that over Kasi do reign. His enemies will destroy root and branch, and to greatness will surely attain. Great Saka all courage in man ever watches with vigilant eyes. For courage as virtue he holds and in it true goodness espies. Gandharvas, gods, angels and men, one and all, emulate such a king. And spirits appearing stand by, of his zeal and his vigour to sing. Be zealous to do what is right, nor, however insulted, yield to sin. Be earnest in efforts for good, no sluggard can bliss ever win. In this regard is the text of your duty, to teach you the way you should go. It is enough to win bliss for a friend or to work grievous ill for an enemy. Thus did the bird Vesantara in a single stanza rebuke the carelessness of the king, and then in telling the duty of a king in 11 stanzas answered his question with all the charm of a Buddha. The hearts of the lot were filled with wonder and amazement, and innumerable shouts of applause were raised. The king was transported with joy, and addressing his courtiers asked them what was to be done for his son, for having spoken thus. He should be made a general in the army, sire. Well, I give him the post of general, and he appointed Vesantara to the vacant post. From then on, placed in this position, he carried out his father's wishes. Here ends the story of Vesantara's question. Again the king after some days, just as before, sent a message to Kundalini, and on the 7th day he paid her a visit, and returning home again he seated himself in the center of a pavilion and ordered Kundalini to be brought to him. And when she was seated on a golden stool, he questioned her as to the duty of a king and spoke this stanza. Kundalini, of royal birth, could you resolve my quest? To one that's glad over men to reign, what course of life is best? When the king thus asked her as to the duties of a king, she said, I suppose, sir, you are putting me to the test, thinking what will a woman be able to tell me? So I will tell you, putting all your duty as a king into just 2 maxims, and she repeated these stanzas. The matter, my friend, is set on in a couple of maxims quite plain. To keep whatsoever one has, and whatever one has not to gain. Take as advisers men that are wise, your interests clearly to see. Not given to riot and waste, from gambling and drunkenness free. Such an one as can guard you properly and your treasure with all proper zeal. As a charioteer guides his chariot, he with skill steers the realm's common welfare. Keep ever your folk well in hand, and duly take stock of your wealth. Never trust to another a loan or deposit, but act for yourself. What is done or undone to your profit and loss it is well you should know. Ever blame the blameworthy and give favor to them that deserve it. You, O great king, should instruct your people in every good way. Otherwise your realm and your substance should fall to unrighteous officials a prey. See that nothing is done by yourself or by others with overmuch speed. For the fool that so acts without doubt will live to repent of the deed. To anger one should never give way, for should it due bounds overflow, it will lead to the ruin of kings and the proudest of houses lay low. Be sure that you never as king your people mislead to their cost. Otherwise all men and women alike in an ocean of trouble be lost. When a king from all fear is set free, and the pleasures of sense are his aim, should his riches and all disappear, to that king it is counted as shame. In this is a text of your duty, to teach you the way you should go. Be an adept in every good work, to excess and to riot an enemy. Study virtue, for vice ever leads to a state full of suffering and suffering. Thus did Kundalini also teach the king his duty in 11 stanzas. The king was delighted and addressing his courtiers asked them, saying, What is to be given to my daughter as a reward for her having spoken thus? The office of treasurer, sire. Well then, I grant her the post of treasurer, and he appointed Kundalini to the vacant post. From then on she held the office and acted for the king. Here ends the story of the question of Kundalini. Again the king after the lapse of a few days, just as before, sent a messenger to the wise Jataka, and going there on the 7th day and being magnificently entertained he returned home and in the same manner took his seat in the center of a pavilion. A courtier placed the wise Jataka on a stool bound with gold, and came carrying the stool on his head. The wise bird sitting on his father's lap and playing with him at length took his seat on the golden stool. Then the king, asking him a question, spoke this stanza. We've questioned both your brother prince, and also fair Kundalini. Now, Jambaka, do you in turn tell me about the highest power? Thus did the king, in asking a question of the great being, not ask him in the way in which he had asked the others, but asked him in a special way. Then the wise bird said to him, Well, sire, listen attentively, and I will tell you all. And like a man placing a purse containing 1,000 pieces of money into an outstretched hand, he began his exposition of a king's duty. Amidst the great ones of the earth a 5 times power we see. Of these the power of limbs is, sure, the last in its degree. And power of wealth, O mighty Lord, the next is said to be. The power of advice third in rank of these, O king, I name. The power of caste without a doubt is considered fourth in fame. And all of these a man that's wise most certainly will claim. Of all these powers that one is best, as power of learning known. By strength of this a man is wise and makes success his own. Should richest realm fall to the lot of some poor stupid creature, another will by violence seize it in his despite. However noble be the prince, whose lot it is to rule, he is hard put to live at all, if he should prove a fool. It is wisdom tests reports of deeds and makes men's fame to grow. Who is with wisdom gifted still finds happiness even in suffering. None that are regardless in their ways to wisdom can attain, but must consult the wise and just, or ignorant remain. Who early rising shall early unweariedly give regard to duty's varied calls, in life is certain to succeed. No one that's bent on hurtful things or acts in listless mood, in anything that he may undertake will come to any good. But one that will unweariedly a rightful course pursue, is sure to reach perfection in whatever he may do. To safeguard one's store is to gain more and more. And these are the things I would have you to mind. For the fool by ill deeds, like a house built of reeds, collapses and leaves pain and ruin behind. Thus did the Bodhisattva in all these points sing the praises of the 5 powers. And exalting the power of wisdom, like to one striking the face of the moon with his words, he addressed the king in 11 stanzas. Unto your parents, warrior king, do righteously, and so, by following a righteous life to heaven you, sire, shall go. After uttering 10 stanzas about the way of righteousness, still further addressing the king he spoke the concluding stanza. In this is the text of your duty, to teach you the way you should go. Follow wisdom and ever be happy, the truth in its fullness to know. Thus did the great being, as though he were letting down the heavenly Ganges, teach the righteous path with all the charm of a Buddha. And the lot paid him great honor and raised innumerable shouts of applause. The king was delighted and addressing his counselors asked, How should my son, wise Jambaka, with a beak like the fresh fruit of the rose apple, be rewarded for having spoken thus? With the post of commander-in-chief, sire. Then I offer him this post, he said, and appointed him to the vacant office, and from then on in the position of commander-in-chief he carried out the orders of his father. Great honor was paid to the 3 birds, and all 3 of them gave instruction in worldly and spiritual matters. The king, abiding in the advice of the great being, by almsgiving and other good works became destined to heaven. The counselors after performing the king's funeral rites, speaking to the birds said, My lord, Jambu, the king ordered the royal umbrella to be raised over you. The great being said, I have no need of the kingdom. Do you exercise rule with all vigilance? And after establishing the people in the moral law, he said practice justice, and he had righteous judgment inscribed on a golden plate and disappeared in the forest. And his teaching continued in force 40,000 years. The master by means of his advice to the king taught this lesson and identified the birth. At that time the king was Ananda, Kundalini was Upalavana, Vesantara was Saraputra, the bird Jambu was myself.